All right. Good morning. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here. Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. On today's show, we're really excited about it. We have got Supply Chain Front and Center with Kathy Fulton, Executive Director with Allen, the American Logistics Aid Network, teed up for a great interview with Kathy and all the great things they're doing. So stay tuned for what should be a great conversation with an organization and a leader that's really making a big impact. Right, Greg?
Undoubtedly. We're big fans of what they do. We've interviewed Kathy and their folks before, so it's great to have her back, particularly in these times.
That's right. So a quick programming note, if you enjoyed today's live stream, check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Today we published the audio version of the Supply Chain Buzz, which took place Monday, where we cover, some of the latest developments and news stories that folks in global supply chain really need to know about. And you get the buzz. You can tune in for the live stream version every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or you can get it when we publish it a couple days later via podcast, where you can find it and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. So, Greg, I put your check-in before I formally introduce you. So that shows you my interest and excitement about diving into our interview we've got today, right?
Yeah, it's true. You want me to introduce myself?
Please do.
Hey, I'm Greg.
So Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur and trusted advisor for many organizations, also a regular co-host of mine here at Supply Chain Now. So Greg, let's talk real quick before we bring Kathy on. Let's talk about the live stream we've got teed up tomorrow.
Yeah. So, it's funny, Scott, as every time we do one of these, I think back to our first one, which was the U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index back in January, which seems like forever ago now. But we started off by producing that. And it's funny because it's brought to mind also by the number of people who are doing these things now and watching them struggle, sometimes on and sometimes off camera, with whether they are live yet. And it's fun to watch that. We experienced that pain, and I appreciate the folks at US Bank working with us through that difficulty. Anyway, it's time again for the Freight Payment Index, right? Once a quarter, they release this. Look, US Bank is one of the top financial institutions in transportation. They processed over $28 billion worth of transactions a year. And so they accumulate all that data and share it with us each quarter. And Bobby Holland, who does the data analysis for US Bank, is joining us. And also, and this is exciting, our good friend, Bloomberg transportation analyst and dog lover, Lee Klaskow, is going to be joining us to give his perspective on this thing tomorrow as well. So we're really looking forward to releasing that latest report. If you get a chance, get a glance at it before we put it out there. But we're gonna go through some analysis of what it tells us, and it's going to be interesting, particularly in these times, right?
Get a chance, take a glance. Good stuff. Looking forward to the live stream tomorrow. Hey, real quick, want to say hello to some of the folks that are joined us on LinkedIn. Umit, hope you're doing well. St. Clair, great to have you back.
Hey.
Joseph and Sylvia, welcome. And Sylvia, by the way, likes the beer stein you've got back there, Greg.
The Rotenberg ob der Tauber.
Okay.
So
what was that?
Rotenberg ob der Tauber.
Okay.
So that's Old German, which means Rothenburg over the Tauber River.
Love it.
This is an old medieval town that has been maintained. It actually was saved during World War II. Long story, but we'll do a show on that later.
Please do.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Got to raise my beer stein IQ next show. All right. Want to welcome in our featured guest today. I think this is her third appearance on Supply Chain Now. We've enjoyed each one. Kathy Fulton, Executive Director with the American Logistics Aid Network, also known far and wide as Allen. Kathy, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Great to have you back.
I have no fancy beer stein, though. Sorry. Nothing to share.
How do we get that in your picture?
Well, Kathy, we are some of your biggest fans. We love the work that Allen's doing and your leadership. It's so rooted in action and making an impact on people that need it. We all need it, but seriously, some of the stuff you're doing is just to the heart of the matter of stuff that needs to take place. So looking forward to today's interview. I want to say hello real quick to Michael and Teresa and Don. All of them are watching us on LinkedIn. Michael Darden with DFM, by the way. Good to have you there, Mike. Appreciate what you're doing as well. All right, so Kathy, let's let our audience get a sense of who you are. You know, Greg and I both have been familiar a good bit with the Kathy Fulton story, but I think it's really
fan club.
That's right.
I've got.
But I think it's really important to kind of hear what preceded your leadership role at Allen. So fill us in.
Yeah, sure. So thank you again for having me. So I have been with Allen for 10 years now. It feels like this year up to now has been about 20 years of that time that I've spent with the organization. But prior to that, I worked for Saddle Creek Logistics Services in the IT department. And that meant that I did, kind of corporate system stuff. It meant that I did, help desk support. So always been that problem solver. But it also meant that I did a lot with business continuity and disaster recovery activities. And that was part of the reason that I got tapped to be loaned from Saddle Creek to work for Allen. I was a loaned executive for a couple of years. I was a volunteer for a couple of years, and then
I think a lot of folks would be familiar with Saddle Creek Logistics. They're one of the largest providers, coast to coast, if not global, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. A wonderful organization. Still a great supporter of ours. I'm based in Central Florida, so I get the opportunity to work out of their corporate office from. When I'm not social distancing, I do keep a home base there. Still no beer sign there either, but I'll work on that.
So we can make that happen.
That's right.
You need supply chain now beer signs.
That's a great idea.
We do need some swag. We're working on that. So Kathy, let's talk now before we dive in deep in terms of what Allen's doing. What led to you joining the Allen team as executive director, nonetheless?
Yeah, so battlefield promotion to executive director, but I'll kind of start at the beginning. So I mentioned that I was loaned for a couple of years from Saddle Creek as an operations director. And I tell people I am not a logistician. I'm not a nonprofit person, by training. So I just, I was learning the ropes. What I was brought on to do was to look at IT and look at the systems applications that Allen was using. What we quickly found out was that it was less about IT, it was less about technology, and more about people. And so I spent a couple of years kind of helping as an operations director, and then sadly in 2013, our founding president, Jock Menzies, passed away in an accident. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to serve in the leadership role, which is I tell everybody just about every time I speak, I tell everybody I have the best job in the world because I get to see all of the good stuff that businesses do, and I know we're going to talk about some of that.
Absolutely. So let's now to our audience, whether you're tuned in on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, I think I got them all right. It's really important, what Allen's doing. I am so pleased that we can share the message because they need more support. The more help, the more support we can provide Allen, the more great work they can do. But it's important for our audience to understand exactly what Allen does. So Kathy, tell us more.
Yeah, so we sit in the middle between business and nonprofit and government, and we help to bring them together specifically around supply chain and logistics conversations. One of our primary activities is really coordinating and facilitating donations of logistics activities for the nonprofits who are active during a disaster response or during any type of crisis. So, just to dive into that a little bit, what we've been doing primarily during this COVID outbreak is helping nonprofits move food. That's a big thing, and we'll talk about some of that as to why we've been helping them move medical supplies. Always, during any type of medical concern, public health crisis, getting personal protective equipment, gloves and masks and gowns moved is critical. And then, just looking at ways to help them augment their activities. How can we help them surge? So technology, conveyors or extra refrigeration units, things like that are in high demand right now.
All right. So let's, now that we've got an understanding of what Alan does, and we're going to get to it at the end, but to our audience that want to check out the organization now, you can go to alanaid.org. ALANAID.org. So Kathy, give us, y'all are really great about giving updates and really good information, accurate information that business leaders need to know. I noticed your situational update yesterday. I know you live on the phone, especially times like this where, we're all in our home offices and whatnot. But give us, kind of lay out what you're seeing right now. Give us a situational update this morning, April 22nd.
Yeah, I do live on the phone, and sometimes, hearing the big picture as part of that becomes a challenge. But I think what we're seeing, 30, 45 days into this, and it's hard for me to keep up with that because I've actually been working on this since January, the end of January, right? But I think what we're seeing is the medical concerns really front and center still. The surge in new patients who have been diagnosed. We still have some areas where, unfortunately, the mortality rate continues to climb, and all of responding to that, protecting medical staff and treating those patients requires that surge in personal protective equipment and pharmaceuticals and everything that goes along with that. So medical supply chain is still the name of the game. Alongside that, we have these concerns about food supply. And when you look out across the food supply chain, you see concerns with surge in retail demand, and then you take it all the way back to the field, and you see farmers who are having to plow things under because of labor or lack of demand on the food service side.
Right.
Yeah. So lots of extremes, a lot of disparity in across the supply chain.
So Kathy, if you would, I know you're passionate about this like we are. Is as important as it is to protect our first responders and our healthcare practitioners and all those brave people there, it is equally as important to really protect our supply chain workforce. We've seen in the last couple of weeks some of the slaughterhouses, operations be put on pause. We've heard just over the weekend, I was checking in with a friend of mine that leads and runs a big automotive plant, and while they've been deemed essential, he spoke to the workforce protective measures they put in place and how difficult it is to manage that. Right, it's a whole different twist. So, speak to that a little bit. What you're seeing, what you're seeing out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that Alan does, in addition to helping nonprofits find resources for their supply chain needs, we also convene a conversation with 30 to 40 supply chain association executives on a weekly basis. And listening to them and the things that their members are going through, the warehouses, the transportation, the manufacturing, all the way through retail, the conversation is the same. We need personal protective equipment, both because of the actual need, the physical, the need to protect people, but also the emotional need. Getting workforce comfortable to actually come into a warehouse and work alongside someone or stand at a production line alongside someone. If you don't have the confidence, maybe you yourself don't feel or are feeling well and healthy, but you don't know what your coworker has. And so, yes, absolutely, personal protective equipment should go to medical staff first, but that medical staff also has to eat, right? And so making sure that the things that they need, food, is able to be produced and sold,
Right.
We have to protect that essential workforce as well.
Agreed. One of the things we talked about pre-show that you're speaking to is protecting the psyche, whether it's the psyche of the workforce or if it's the psyche of the people at home, and not just here in the States, but globally. I think unfortunately for a lot of folks, including myself, there's a blind spot in terms of what, how are folks in Hungary or Brazil or, China, what situation are they in right now? And the psyche, if we can maintain that healthy psyche, it helps us not hoard things and not lose a sense of serenity that we need to get through this challenge.
Yeah.
The other thing I wonder if you could speak to this, Kathy, and Greg, we're going to get you. I know you're excited to talk with Kathy about a big development and a big partnership that they've just rolled out. But right before we talk about that, Kathy, speak to. We shy away from politics here. We talk what folks need to hear about. And I think one of the challenges we've seen out there in recent weeks, if not months, are the mixed signals. If you look at what we're getting from government leaders at all levels, to some degree, industry leaders, different experts. There's smart people on all sides of this, but speak to the importance of an aligned message right now.
Yeah. So, I've heard it called mixed signals. I've heard it called patchwork of policies. We kind of refer to it as asymmetric policies. And this is really, I look at it, I try to look at everything through a supply chain lens. And if you are a truck driver who has to go through 5 different states to deliver your load, well, some of the counties you're going to pass through are going to require you to wear a mask if you're getting out of your cab. Some of them have restaurants that are closed, so you can't even, where are you going to find food? Early on, we had problems with rest stops and public rest areas being closed. So all of those different policies really cause friction in the supply chain. So even without the political component of it, there are real impacts from those policy decisions.
Right.
And so, as much as all of us can, talking to those who are in office who are enacting those policies to say, look, yes, we need to protect people. Public health absolutely comes first, but not at the cost of ensuring that food gets to the market.
Right.
We're moving into a time right now where some of those policy restrictions are being lifted, right? And so how do you then roll back things that you put into place? What our business partners are telling us is, from the utilization of personal protective equipment in their warehouses and for their transportation for their truckers, it's the new normal for them. They're going to continue to utilize it, to provide for it. Hopefully there's some point in the future where we don't, we have a vaccine and we don't need it. But for now, that's the reality that they are planning for.
And that the new normal will be, it will definitely be new. Whenever we get to that point, there'll be some short-term big differences, some long-term permanent differences. And there's a lot of work to be done. But, the cool thing is supply chain cuts through all the noise, right? It cuts through the politics. It cuts through the, all the propaganda that you hear, or just all the noise. That's the best way I can put it, to bring action and a can-do attitude and the bottom line results of what we need. And that's where I love the practical element that is part of Allen's DNA and the culture. I can really appreciate that. All right. So Greg, and real quick to our audience, hey, let us know what you're seeing, especially when it comes to supply chain workforce. That is we try to bake that into every conversation we have here at Supply Chain Now. It is so important. Let us know what you're seeing, and we'll feature your observations on the live stream. All right, Greg, let's talk about this new exciting development.
Yeah. So I first off, I think it's interesting the way that supply chain has tackled this, because we're so analytical. We're so used to disruptions. This disruption, the biggest disruption we've seen, isn't even because of the illness. It's because of the massive social disruption that we've created by simultaneously shutting down commerce and workforces and lifestyles that has caused this big disruption. And it has created a lot of issues for people, obviously, but also for companies. And I saw what you guys announced the other day in terms of the Supply Chain Intelligence Center. And it's a free service that you're providing to help people get to, and companies get to what they need. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah.
And thank you for it.
Yeah. This is one of the most exciting things that we've done. We have had conversations about doing something like this in the past, and unfortunately, it took a crisis like this to make it a reality. But what the Supply Chain Intelligence Center is a single map where you can see policy restrictions or policy enablers, things that are affecting the movement, the flow of commerce. So this could be things like the math that I mentioned. It could be hours of service waivers, which kind of help increase the volume and velocity of freight. It could be things like whether municipal courts are open and closed. Looking on my social media this morning, a friend has a new job but can't get started because they can't do a background check because the courts are closed. And onboarding drivers to increase that volume is something that we're concerned about. So single map, it is free to anyone. Super excited because we're partnering with an organization called Risk Pulse. I think you guys have probably talked to David and others in the past. But great organization that brings in not just our policy layer, but also weather information.
Right.
You can see where the cases are, the reported COVID cases are, everything that you need to know right in a single pane of glass.
Very comprehensive. I mean, there's so many things that go into risk management these days, especially in the information age where we have all this data at our fingertips, but it can be overload if you don't have the right platform to present it so that we can make smarter decisions, right? And that's kind of what I'm gathering from this intelligence center.
Well, so, and I have to give a shout out to this incredible team of volunteers. And Tadina, if you are listening or you catch up with this, Tadina Ross from Surge Transportation has led this massive data gathering effort. But what
we'll
they've
make
done,
sure she hears about it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So what they've done is they have gone to all of these different websites where the governors post their executive orders, where the mayors post their proclamations, where the state driver's license agencies, and they have gone and found the actual documents, and I'll talk about that in a second, but the actual documents that describe what is allowed or not allowed, what's restricted, what's allowed. And they have, gathered all this data. You can see very clearly, hey, this shelter-in-place order ends April 30th, or schools are closed through the end of the year. But they have pulled all of that together from something that would have taken, a dispatcher or a production manager, who knows how long to go to all of these different websites to find. Now they can quickly do it. Our goal is, Alan is pretty simple. We want to make sure that nonprofit organizations save time and money. We want to make sure that freight moves. And if we're saving businesses time with not having to go and look at 30 different websites in order to get one load booked, then we're doing what we need to do. It's those pre-existing flows of freight that are critical to preserve during times of crisis.
We've seen some, first of all, this is a great effort, and it really takes a neutral sort of clearinghouse type effort and entity to do this. Impressive that you've pulled all these volunteers together, but we've seen a lot of this sort of clearinghouse methodology to cut through the clutter, so companies can go one place to get as much information as possible. So I'm curious. Okay, I'm a tech guy. Kathy, I know you're a tech person as well. So
that's right.
So Scott mentioned the wealth of information that is available. Is there a way to filter it out? So if you want to just see certain things, you can.
Yeah. So reporting is coming. So two things that we're that are in development right now are the actual links to the executive orders. So you know sometimes those are important to have in the cab of the driver, and then the sorry, I got distracted by the pretty picture there.
That is pretty.
And then the ability to do reporting, right? There are some advanced features for people who are customers of RiskPulse to be able to add their own loads or assets to it. But being able to report and look at restrictions by a particular location, be able to have that printed out, whatever you need to do with it is coming soon.
Well, yeah, I think that ability will allow companies to use it however they desire, right?
That's right. And I'll say, the policies are really critical right now, as we are still under these restrictions and as they start to roll away. But it's April 22nd, which tells me we are 38 days from the start of hurricane season. And it looks like it's going to be a bad one, aren't they all? It only takes one hurricane to cause a problem.
Yeah.
But there are similar restrictions that happen during hurricanes and other disasters where roads are blocked off,
right?
Where you need your access credential to be able to get back in, or there are things that are required. What I love about this is it's persistent. We're putting design elements into it such that we have a huge team of volunteers right now. We're designing it for upkeep well into the future to deal with whatever type of crisis.
Hey, Greg, if I could interject real quick, Kathy and Greg, I know you've got a couple more questions, Greg, to pose to Kathy.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Steve and Brian, both who are or were watching us on Facebook. Great. Hope you're both well. And this quick comment from Don on LinkedIn. Don says, I believe we can all agree that political disparities aside, the challenges of effective distribution to support healthcare and the systematic reopening of the economy requires us to look forward to how we strengthen our nation, or our national as well as our global infrastructure, to be better prepared for the next such crisis. As bad as this crisis has been for everyone, it has provided us a wake-up call and a tremendous learning opportunity to the importance of effective supply chain strategies to humankind. And that reminds me of something you shared earlier, Kathy. This crisis, even though it is what it is, but it does lead to innovation, such as the Intelligence Center, that is going to mitigate the impact of future crises.
Yeah, that innovation is taking place, not just with technology products, but you see it in manufacturing. You see the folks who are 3D printing face shields for doctors. You see people who are sewing masks. So the maker community has really stepped up. In that spirit of innovation, that unity of mission is how we, if we can keep that alive, that's how we're going to get through whatever the next crisis is. I always worry that as emergency managers, we're sometimes looking to the lessons from the past. We've never had anything like this in most of our lifetimes, right? Alan did a little bit of work on the Ebola crisis, but it's not the same. It's not a worldwide pandemic, right? It did not disrupt supply chains globally. So how do we, as emergency managers, the group that I participate in, but how do we as supply chain professionals look at this and say, okay, what are the pieces where I'm short? What are the processes where I'm too concentrated in a geography, or I didn't think about my workforce enough. All of those things, I tell everybody, you got to be writing stuff down every single day.
Yeah. That's funny. We're having that same discussion
every day. I think about this because, I mentioned this is day whatever for me since I've been working on this since January. And I look back at some of the lessons that I wrote myself way back at the beginning. I don't even remember, oh yeah, that's great. I've probably relearned that thing, 5 times since now, but at least I wrote it down so that, 2 years from now, when I'm looking at it, I'll have a reference point.
I think, so quick hot take. This is just a quick one, Scott, not the final hot take.
Okay.
A Waze API, Kathy, would be great because then you can use the team aspect. You're writing that down, aren't you?
I am.
Because, when you said roadblocks, right, it immediately made me go there. What a great source of real-time information that is. So I don't know how possible it is, but possibility. But,
Waze and ELD data and all of that, right? All of those things. My development team hates me because having worked in IT, I still know a little bit about what's possible. So
well, you both of us know this, and many people in tech know this. If you can say it, you can do it.
That's
right? Especially when
time and money.
You have to do it.
If I don't have to do it, it's easy.
It's easy. You made, I wanted to ask you about risk mitigation and disaster recovery and that sort of thing. And one of the things that we've seen is exactly what you're talking about, Kathy, and that is companies who are not only, they're not only dealing with the crisis now, but they are taking notes. And many are actively building a tiger team to attack this problem right now. And either building or planning for a team who will analyze all these happenings and what to do about it to be as prepared as we possibly can in the future. To also answer the previous question. There's a lot that you can't predict. First of all, we have to remember this seismic societal disruption is a response that has never occurred on the history of the planet. And its impact is even greater than the impact of the actual illness. So what we need to know, and maybe one of the communications we need to have, is with government to have some heads up that is coming, right? I think we all suspected it. We just didn't know when it was coming. And but aside from that, let's talk about how companies are attacking risk management or disaster recovery and things they can learn from this, or maybe even some embedded mistakes or perceptions or practices that have hurt companies during, going into or going through this.
I think I'll step back for a second and say, looking at those after action things, I don't know if you guys know Robert Martichenko from Lean4, but he's actually written a white paper, like, what does supply chain look like next? So that's a great kind of trying to figure out how do we design for what's coming next. But that takes a lot of self-reflection and honesty about how our businesses are not doing well during this time, right? There are some businesses who have figured it out. I hear about them every day. They're like, yep, we've got temperature checks. We've got, we're giving all of our folks PPE, and, we're, split at our risk and all of those things. But for every single one of them who seem to be doing well, there are others who are not, right? So those honest conversations, where have you, I don't want to say failed, where have you struggled with your workforce, right? Where have you, are you taking care of yourself? Self-care during a time like this is so important. I know you're going to talk about something you guys are doing later this week, but like my friends and I do a virtual happy hour every couple of weeks, right? We get on, we get on a video chat,
decompress and de-stress a bit. That's right. We decompress and we de-stress. Like those types of things to get us through, to clear our brains. But sorry, back to my point, like being honest about where you failed. Making sure that
you're not doing things that are counterproductive to response and recovery efforts. I launched a rant a couple of weeks ago on social media about all of these different efforts to go out and buy PPE, and it was honestly it was individuals. It was before the states had to go out and buy their own PPE.
Right.
But just making sure that there's some understanding of how those things affect medical supply chains. Someone mentioned earlier about not hoarding. Even those individual things, but those roll up to corporate level as well.
Right.
I saw a note yesterday about advising a particular store to order 20% more than you think because you're going to get 20% cuts, not because there are shortages, but because they can't flow the product fast enough to get the particular product lines that you want.
Yep.
Right.
So,
Real quick, I want to say hello to Hope, who's joined in with us on Facebook. Hope you're doing well. No pun intended. No pun intended there. And Freight Hub on Twitter says, and hello to Freight Hub, we all need to adapt and innovate to strengthen our economy, our business, and our nation. Greetings from South Florida. So hopefully the folks down at Freight Hub are doing well. So, Kathy, a lot of what I'm hearing is a lot of the things that intuitively a lot of us would do to react and to help, really, right, with good intentions. Sometimes that actually hurts us more than helps us. That's kind of some of what you're sharing, right?
Absolutely. And, we're not seeing some of the traditional problems, sometimes food banks and others get overwhelmed with donations during a crisis. We actually have the flip side of that right now. And I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about food banks and some of the challenges that they've had from a supply chain perspective. They have both a supply shock because a lot of their donations come from the retail channel. Retail is selling more, they have less to donate to a food bank, right? So that's a supply shock for the food bank. They also have a demand shock. 22 million people have now filed for unemployment, or north of 20 million people have now filed for unemployment. That's creating additional strain on those hunger relief organizations. So, how to help them navigate the supply shock and the demand shock. And then you add into that the fact that a lot of food banks work requires volunteers to come in and sort through cans that have been donated. They can't do that right now. Bringing volunteers in from the outside, standing close to each other is not a possibility. People can't come in to pick up food boxes because of loss of restrictions.
Right.
So helping them figure out, okay, how do you get donations in the right sizes? Food service items are great, but you can't take grandma a 25-pound bag of flour, right?
Right.
So helping them navigate all of that, plus the new distribution challenges of the last mile activities. So I know that I got off topic from what you really asked me about, but I wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to really think about, how they can help support their local food bank if they are in the food industry.
Right.
Figuring out how to support them with in-kind. If they're individuals, figuring out how to make a cash donation to support those efforts.
Nothing's easy.
Nothing is off topic right now.
That's true.
Everything has changed, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every chance you get to advocate for anyone in need, you should take it.
Yeah.
Well, nothing's easy right now, but what the good news here is there is one thing that is easy, and that is if you have the wherewithal to help and you're not sure of how to do it, give Alan a call, give Kathy a call. They've been there and done it, and they will give you some great practical advice of how to plug in with Alan or how to probably help on your own. All right, so we've got a great question that we're not going to be able to do it justice in a fuller conversation that we need, but I want to share this from Mamadou, and I want y'all to what would be your Reader's Digest version to this great question, but it's very broad. And Greg, I want to put you on the spot first. If you had a couple of pointers to respond to Mamadou in this great question here, what would that be?
Let's see, to mitigate the risks. I would say first and foremost, you've got to equip and protect your workforce. The strains that we're seeing in the supply chain are not on the systems necessarily. They're predominantly on the workforce. The other is to educate, as Kathy was just talking about, is to educate the consumers as much as possible. To whatever extent you can do that, I know that's tough, to educate them on the butterfly effect of what they might do. Toilet paper and paper towels have to be the best example, right? We didn't buy toilet paper because we needed it or we felt like it cured COVID-19. We saw that other person over there with a cart full of it, and we thought, well, we better get ours before it's all gone. And that's based on our knowledge of the supply chain and the sense that it's a zero-sum game. Once the toilet paper's gone, it's gone forever, kind of thing. So I think those are the two biggest things. Protect your workforce. Advise in your locality, whatever it is, advise your consumers as much as you possibly can. And I think a lot of us have taken on that mantle to try to attack that perception.
Well, Greg, I'm going to add to your own answer because I've seen you talk about it on these shows and on LinkedIn just this week about while spreadsheets have gotten us here, they're not necessarily going to get us there. And
right.
Companies have to embrace technology and technology platforms. So before I pose the same question to Kathy, speak to that for just a second.
Yeah, look, I'm a big advocate for that. This, Kathy, I feel very strongly about this. And there are the companies that have maintained manual processes and paper processes and spreadsheet solutions, and the people who advocate for those may not survive this. As I said on a show a couple of weeks ago, I think if you've built your house on sand and you're able to survive this crisis, don't be foolish enough to rebuild it on sand, build it on stone, use technology, right? Digital transformation is a catchphrase, but essentially it means get rid of paper processes, get rid of manual processes, and get rid of spreadsheets. Please do not believe, as a human being, and Kathy, I know you have to feel commonly, if not exactly the same here. Don't believe that you and your spreadsheet can do what technology can.
Right.
You can't. And if you believe that you can and your company survives, you're probably going to be looking for a job, and you may not be the person, or you may not be the company that actually survives this. This is that critical. Yeah. It really is. This is exposing the biggest cracks in this.
Well put. All right. So Kathy, real quick, want to say, give a shout out to Memory, who is a supply chain leader out in South Africa, I believe, a regular live streamer with us. She always has great questions and comments. And Memory, hello, good morning. Okay. So Kathy, Mamadou's question to you. What's your quick take?
Yeah. Hot take is, map your supply chain. It's not too late to do that, right? And you have to look not just at your suppliers, because everybody's disrupted, but you really need to look at, your customer base. What's that going to look like coming out of this crisis? I'm reading about trucking companies every day on this would be on the supply side. Are the people you're working with now going to survive this? Liquidity is a real problem, not just for transportation, but across a lot of industries right now. We're going to see a lot of contraction, I think, across supply chain services providers. And so really thinking hard about what your supply chain looks like and designing for diversity. Yep. So I think that's my take.
Well put. So if I could add, so we've gotten a couple messages here from Todd and some others about it's all about risk management. And I believe we have been moving and are certainly going to be moving into the golden age of risk management. And when I think of risk management, I think of a strategic approach where you've got that involves a number of different things. I am no risk management expert, but I think of scenario modeling and contingency planning. I think of maybe hiring a dedicated chief risk management officer, which I've been told is going to be a more and more common practice. We're already starting to see some of that. And, like we talked about on the front end, communication, with your upstream and downstream supply chain partners proactively, so that you're not talking in crisis, you're talking before anything hits, and strengthening those bonds so that you can be more nimble and more flexible and more prepared. All of that and many others are gonna be part of much more effective strategic risk management practices, including the resources like this too, which we've talked about, which Greg, opened up this segment about, the Supply Chain Intelligence Center. Finding these resources is really important, right, Kathy?
Absolutely. I mean, I love the fact that, we're able to put this on a map, and we're able to direct people to information. Anything that, and I'll just say, we're always looking to improve this. So if there's something that you don't see that you want to see, drop us a line. Like Greg said earlier, you can do anything with enough time and money. And on that point, I'll just say we are still looking for funding partners to help finish out the build out of this. So I always need to plug that.
So Kathy, lean on our friends at Resilience 360, David and Todd Craig, because they
are incredible partners.
And they have built a really great tool that was really valuable even before this crisis, but particularly now, right?
Okay. All right. So on your last comment,
squeeze some extra work out of Todd.
Hello, Todd. Hope you're doing well. Hey, Kathy, if you would, on that last note, as we wrap up this interview, before we talk about some of these other resources, how can folks connect with you? How can folks learn more about Allen, and how can folks get involved?
Yeah, allenaid.org is the best way to find us, our website. And I know you've flashed that a couple of times. That is absolutely the best way to find that the Intelligence Center. It's the best way to find out what open requests we have for support. It's the best way to just drop us a note and and ask for anything. And it's also the best way to figure out what our funding needs are, what our wish list is. We're also a nonprofit. We are here to serve everybody. It's why we are not charging for that, for the Intelligence Center. It's why we don't charge anybody a dime for the coordination work that we do to help the nonprofit community. This is of, by, and for the industry. We are here to unify all of the different parts of the supply chain, just to have the biggest impact we have on this in every crisis. So allenaid.org.
Allenaid.org. And I'm sure you, as we said, you live on conference calls these days, but I bet a bunch of those are benchmarking, comparing notes, advising companies whether they're plugged into Allen or they want to be plugged into Allen, or they're doing other things. So always a pleasure to connect with you, Kathy Fulton, Executive Director of the American Logistics Aid Network. Really appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. And don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to get you to weigh in on a couple things here, maybe some of the resources. I want to say hello to St. Clair again. Appreciate your feedback here. He says, another great session with you, Kathy and Greg. Lots of good information. I agree. I think Kathy is one of the supply chain leaders that, again, it's about cutting through lip service and mantra and a lot of the cliches out there. It's about good, timely information you can act on, and that's what you bring to the table, I think, on your third or fourth appearance here with us on Supply Chain Now. Okay, so Greg, as much as I'd like to spend the next hour with Kathy and talk more about some of these topics, let's wrap up this live stream with a couple of upcoming events on our end. And I think we're going to try to share one here. Tell us about Supply Chain Trivia Nights. It's going to Kathy's idea of kind of decompressing and de-stressing, right?
Yeah, Kathy, we need to see you there, first of all. Well, let me start real quick with, we have some heavy hitters. The Chief Supply Chain Officer of Coca-Cola is going to join us. It looks like Mr. Supply Chain and the Supply Chain Queen may be joining us.
Wow.
Royalty is involved.
Angie Reno is, I think she said she registered, right? I'm challenging you, Angie, if you haven't. Kathy, I feel like you've got a shot. You've got an analytical mind. You love trivia. Super
intelligent.
It's Friday night, I know, but come on, give us a little time. Let's see if you can't win a couple $100, by the way.
Well, hey, we want to see Mamadou.
Yeah.
Mamadou. We want to see. I know it's not sure where you are and what time frame you're in, but we'd love to have you be a part of Supply Chain Trivia Night. And all of the listeners, right? That's Hope says she's coming. Hope, fantastic. Glad that you're going to be a part of our trivia night. But Greg, what's really important, and I skipped right over your hot takes. We'll circle back after we share these two resources. Greg, why are we doing this? Tell if you could just share some of the struggle we have here, right? Managing time.
Yeah, I was going to say it's as much. Honestly, there's some selfish intent here. It's as much for us as it is for the community. Our production schedule hasn't slowed one bit. We're live more than we have been. It's put a lot of our folks, our team under strain, and a lot of the folks in supply chain under strain. Kathy, we know you're working 7 a.m. to midnight, and we hear that so often from people. Tevin Taylor, lots of folks that we talk to all the time. And we just felt like the community needed this, and this is just a little bit different way. Lots of people are doing. They're doing a happy hour, and we did one of those a couple Fridays ago. This just struck us as fun, educational, a great way to wind down. I think we're gonna see some trash talk, and yet we're gonna get to evaluate people's knowledge, and and these are gonna be deep questions, and we're gonna have some fun with it. Right. So it's for you, it's for us. It's for everybody out there. Just join us, even if you just want to watch.
That's right. And you don't have to register, but it would be great if you did register. We're going to send out some details. We're using a new platform called Kahoot, which is going to make the management of the trivia a lot easier, across our global audience. But you don't have to register. You can go to supplychainradio.com and register easy on our events tab, or join us for the live stream. We're going to we'll start at 4:30 Eastern Daylight Time, but we'll offer instructions of how you can join, and we'll probably start the trivia night at 4:35 or 4:40. Okay, one other quick development that we want to make sure we tell folks about is National Supply Chain Day, which unbelievably there's never been one until 2020 here in the States. Greg, really excited about that taking place next week with our friends at Point A, right?
Well, look, I'm proud to say I know the founder of National Supply Chain Day, Mary Kate Love, who's one of the leaders at Point A. And
very humble as well.
Yeah, I don't care whether she wants to. I'm holding her up as the founder. I know she probably wants to remain behind the scenes, but she has done a great job. This took actual working with governments to make this happen. So, this is not a small deal.
Right.
It's a great opportunity for us to all celebrate. Coincidentally, it's also the opening, what was going to be the physical opening, but at least the virtual grand opening of the new Point A facility. And we're going to have some great speakers and information brought on that day, and a bit of a celebratory for the supply chain organization. I think another opportunity for everyone to let their hair down a bit and really celebrate each other and what all of you and all of us have done to keep things moving and to recover during this difficult time.
Absolutely. And as we talked about on a previous live stream a week or two ago, we want to get Alan connected with Point A. They are unlike many innovation centers, which can be more about the cliche definition of innovation. Point A is about action and getting stuff done and finding ways to plug in and support efforts like Alan, which is so important. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Kathy, really have enjoyed this conversation. Greg, I've got to ask you before we leave, all the information that Kathy shared, give me your key takeaway or two in Reader's Digest fashion.
My first takeaway is, what could be the new name of Alan when it becomes the global logistics aid network? Because Kathy, you just went live with people in 50 countries. So expect that phone call. You might want to be thinking about that, or how you can coordinate with other entities in other regions of the world. Yep. And just that I am personally, and I think we all should be so thankful that organizations like Alan not only, act as a clearinghouse, but coordinate other for-profit and nonprofit entities to streamline solutions during this time. That, there are lots of other things. I think we've talked about the things that companies need to do to recover, but personally, I think these are the biggest takeaways, is that organizations like Allen that get things done, that make things happen, that create or reduce friction to create change and create recovery are so valuable, particularly.
Agreed. Yeah, blessed be the ties that bind, but also blessed be the organizations that are out there cutting through the noise, bravely fighting through the same challenges that exist out in the environment and doing good things. So really appreciate that, Kathy, you and the Allen team, allenaid.org. And I believe we've got the direct link to the URL in the show notes of this episode. So thanks again, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Okay, so to our audience, thanks for tuning in. This is kind of this is a streamlined version of our live stream here at Supply Chain Now. Yes, here. So to our audience, again, thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for the great questions and comments. We hope to see you at our Supply Chain Trivia Night this Friday. Certainly, hopefully, hope to see you at National Supply Chain Day next week. If you like the live stream conversation and the insights you heard from Kathy Fulton, check out our podcast. You can find it and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. On behalf of the entire team here, Scott Luton, wishing you a wonderful week ahead. Stay safe. Brighter days lie ahead for sure. We're going to break through really soon. And with that in mind, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.